Welcome back to the Rollout. I'm Jeff Pratt, and today I am joined by Just Jay Zim. My normal co-host Trent Henrich is unfortunately feeling under the weather today. Jay, however, was able to pop back in after missing last show. Jay, how you doing?
I missed the show before last week.
Oh, last week. That's right. You were back. Yeah. Okay. That's right.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, and we all did pretty well this week. Jay, I didn't tally up yours. I'm sure you have it prepared
Went
for
9-5.
us.
So
9-5. Okay. Trent also went.
better.
Trent also went 9-5. I went 10-4, making me 96 for 147 on the year. Trent is 90 for 147, and Jay has only been with us for a couple weeks now, but obviously he's done pretty darn well in the weeks that he's picked with us so far. So
I think it's something like 37-18 or like 38-18, something like that.
yeah, I mean, that's pretty good. That's a better ratio than both of us have, I think.
Smaller
So
sample
far.
size,
It is a small sample size, but you know, you're going to get to add to it this week. We're going to jump straight into it. All three of us did make our picks for Thursday Night Football, which, as you know, since you're watching this now, happened a couple of days ago. It was the Seattle Seahawks defeating the Arizona Cardinals. I took the Cardinals. I thought that Kyler Murray and that defense were going to be able to stop Russell Wilson again and really just exploit the horrible Seattle secondary. That wasn't the case. Jay and Trent both took the Seahawks, so they are already up one leg on me this week. Why don't we just jump right into these weekend games, Jay? We'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers, the only remaining undefeated team in the NFL, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, who looked surprisingly tough and gave the Green Bay Packers a bit of a fight last week, or at least more than they were expecting. Jay, I'll throw it to you. Who are you taking in this one?
Well, I'm taking the Steelers. I said it last week. When I take the Steelers, I'm going to be right more times than I'm wrong. And against a team that's really bottom two in the league record-wise. Listen, if the Jags pull off an upset, and, I don't think the Steelers are going 16-0. I think they're going to lose at some point, maybe twice, maybe even three times, probably twice, in my opinion. I don't think they're losing three times. I think they'll probably lose twice. If the Jags somehow pull up an upset and people get this pick right, congratulations. That's impressive. I'm just not willing to go that far out on a limb here this week, even though they looked impressive against the Packers. They really did. Keelan Cole had an amazing game. He was on my bench, which is okay.
He was on everyone's bench. Let's be real.
Right. Well, he's a fantastic player, obviously very versatile. I don't think the Jags are the worst 1-8 team I've ever seen in my life. But, the Steelers team is 9-0 for a reason, and you have to roll with a team that's looking this good on both sides of the ball. Roethlisberger is kind of having a sneaky top, 5 stat, interception ratio season, and this defense is looking pretty good. So that's my take.
He's rolling with Pittsburgh. I'm going to take the Steelers as well this week. I think that there's no way Jacksonville comes into this game and pulls off the upset. The only way they would be able to do so is riding the hot hand of James Robinson. And I just don't see that happening against the Steelers defense, which is one of the best run defenses in the league, led by TJ Watt, who is quietly putting together a Defensive Player of the Year caliber season right now. Obviously, he's a major reason why the Steelers are currently undefeated. And, you look at Jacksonville, Robinson's their best weapon. DJ Chark has been inconsistent all year. Keelan Cole, same thing. He's a great player, but we don't see him produce on a consistent basis. They just have a bunch of moving pieces. They're a young team. They're obviously promising, looking forward to the future. We don't know who's going to be under center for them this year, but I think it's safe to say it's not going to be Jake Luton or Trevor Lawrence. It could be Trevor Lawrence or Gardner Minshew. I think they're probably going to be adding someone this offseason, either through the draft or via free agency, like we saw them do with Nick Foles a couple of years ago. All that being said, I'm taking the Steelers in this one, Jay. I agree with you completely. And we do have Trent's picks for this week, even though he's currently unable to come on the podcast. He's taking Pittsburgh as well. No shocker there. So all three of us roll with the undefeated Steelers in the first matchup of the weekend. Moving on, we have a tough one. It's the Detroit Lions taking on the Carolina Panthers. The Lions, They're coming off a pretty impressive win over the Washington football team last week. They bounced back when they needed to. Unfortunately, it was led by rookie sensation DeAndre Swift, who suffered a concussion in practice this week, and he's going to be out. So they're going to have to roll back to Adrian Peterson at starter, sprinkle in some Kerryon Johnson there, and they're facing a Panthers team who is also missing their starting running back, Christian McCaffrey. Mike Davis, he's been capable of handling a large workload and producing so far this year. They're going to give Curtis Samuel some touches. I'm not really worried about Carolina in this one and their offense. Obviously, Teddy Bridgewater right now, he's the one to be worried about. His status is up in the air. He suffered a pretty bad injury last week that forced him out of the end of the game. His MCL is damaged quite a bit. We don't know if he's going to be playing this week. But if he does, I'm going to take the Panthers. And even if he doesn't, I think I'm going to roll with Carolina in this one just because no DeAndre Swift, no Kenny Golladay either for the Detroit Lions, which is even bigger. And I didn't touch on that as well. But Marvin Jones has looked good. But, no Swift, no Golladay, no win for Detroit. So I'm taking the Lions. Jay, what about you? Or not the Lions. I'm taking the Panthers. Sorry. Yeah,
I was going to correct you. But, it's interesting because I think even despite those injuries, the Lions are probably the hotter team coming into this game, especially after they, put up a good amount of points through the air as well as on the ground. But against a passing defense that was number one in the league in terms of, I think, passing yards per game maybe or something like that. They were either way, DC was great against the pass. And Stafford had a really good game. The defense did not look impressive, but that's beside the point because they still looked better than the Panthers did last week. However, who is the better backup running back in this game? Listen, I love Adrian Peterson. Obviously, what he's done for the league, the National Football League. He's a Hall of Famer, first ballot, one of 3 running backs in my lifetime to win an NFL MVP. Very impressive. Mike Davis has looked amazing this year for a backup running back in this league. And also, they touched on in the broadcast this past week, when McCaffrey's out, defenses are having to guess where the ball is going to a little bit more. And that makes the Panthers offense a little interesting, even when he's out. Curtis Samuel, Mike Davis, and then obviously people like DJ Moore. I just think that they have a lot of weapons that they can use. And the Panthers looked pretty good in that first half of the Bucs game, I have to be honest. Things really fell apart for them in the second half. But I think, if they just had game plan better and adjusted better at halftime, things could have been different. And also giving up a 98-yard run is just abysmal. That's
to Ronald Jones, nonetheless, who is a power back. That was a tough one. That was Derrick Henry-esque from Ronald Jones. So you have to give him credit. But that was
just that second level.
Man, the way he did. I don't understand how, unless you're Derrick Henry, how you give that up to a average or slightly above average running back. And I like Rojo, but that should not have happened.
No, Rojo's great, but you're right. 98, it's only happened 4 times for a reason. So, listen, but all that being said, I'm still taking the Panthers because, I think that even though this is kind of a must-win game for the Lions, it's really hard to bet on the Lions a lot, and they're riding a win streak right now. And, sometimes the luck of franchises matter, and I think the Panthers are due, so I'm going to give it to them. But this is a tough game because both teams have looked very inconsistent. I think Bridgewater has had a game with the interception, game with no interception, game with interception. He's been very up and down, even though he's been pretty solid, obviously, for this team. So, I think it'll be a weird game, but entertaining nonetheless. And, I watched both these teams last week, and I wish I could watch this game this week. I don't know if it's on or not, but I'll probably find a way to keep up with it. So I'm excited.
Sounds good. Both of us roll with Carolina. Trent, we know him. He likes the Lions. He took Detroit in this matchup, even without DeAndre Swift or Kenny Golladay. We're going to figure out who's starting at quarterback for the Panthers tomorrow, sometime before the game. Teddy Bridgewater's a game time decision, and if he doesn't go, they'll have to make the decision between P.J. Walker and Will Grier. So we'll see where they go there. Obviously, 2 completely different quarterbacks. Walker is much more mobile. Will Grier has a huge arm. It's going to be interesting to see where they go with that decision. All right, moving on.
Can we switch our picks if Bridgewater does not play?
No, you got to pick.
All right, I'm going with Panthers still.
All right, me too. I
Hopefully
made that risk too. All right, moving on. We have the New England Patriots taking on the Houston Texans. If you are a Texans fan, I am so sorry you had to watch that game against the Cleveland Browns last week. That was just god-awful football. And the only good thing you can take away from it is that the best 1-2 punch in football is back. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt both looked amazing last week. Chubb came off IR, handled a really large workload, looked stellar. Hunt filled back into his change of pace role, and that seems like the role that he really excels for this team for Cleveland. But we're not talking about the Browns right now. We'll get to them later. We're talking about the Texans and the Patriots. As we know, a couple weeks ago, Jay, a lot of people pronounced this New England Patriots team dead in the water for this year. And look what they've done since then. 2 straight wins, a huge one against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens after getting beat by them in what proved to be a huge loss last year for the Patriots. They were able to get the dub this year. Cam Newton finally back to playing like himself. He was really good. Damian Harris, amazing. Jacoby Myers, looking like everything Patriots fans want N'Keal Harry to be. They will have Sony Michel back for this game. And honestly, as a Patriots fan, I'm not excited to get him back because I don't want him to take touches away from Damian Harris. We'll see what happens with that. If Bill knows what he's doing, Michelle will only get 5 or so touches in this game, and it'll be taking them away from Rex Burkhead. But we don't know how that's going to go. I'm going to roll with the Patriots in this one. Hard to pick against the hot hand, especially when Bill Belichick is commanding the team that is coming in off a 2-game win streak, including one over the best teams in the NFL. One of the best teams in the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm taking New England in this one. Jay, I'll throw it to you.
Well, first, Sony looked pretty good with his last game out there before he got hurt.
Yeah, he looked fine. He was rushing against a horrible defense, though.
Yeah, so what? They're rushing against a horrible defense today, too, or Sunday.
Yeah.
You're right, though. Damian Harris should be getting the most carries, obviously. That's not a question. We know that. I'm just defending Sony a little bit. All right. The Texans, they looked pretty bad. They should have won that game. I picked them to win the game. They got down there at the goal line twice when they should have scored any points. Went for it. Did not work for them. They should have put more points on the board. I don't care how bad the weather was. That was an awful game from them, and they should have won. Yeah, I'm going to take the Patriots too. Listen, I said that if the Patriots didn't make moves after they lost 3 in a row, I was like, well, you can put a fork in the season. Now they're looking like they're coming back up to that 9-7 mark. You know what I mean? Where I thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year. So, like I said last week, I don't know what direction it's so hard to read this Patriots team. You know what I mean? You just got to take it week to week, analyze what you see. I didn't even think we had a win last week, and we did. So that's huge. We both said it was a little bit of a stretch. I didn't think we had to win this game to at least make a push at a winning record and maybe a playoff spot, and we did. So that's huge for this team. That is massive because this game this week is one of those games that was winnable and still is winnable. And now it's a must, or not a must win, a guaranteed win basically, based on how they played last week. I mean, I think for a team like the Patriots that's number 2 in how much they run in the league, they should run over this Texans team. And getting Gilmore back on defense would be huge. I really don't think we should choke away this win. This is a must win to get back to 500. So I'm going to take us, and we'll see where we go from here.
All right, we both take the Patriots. And Trent, when he sent us his picks, he didn't actually include this game, which is kind of shocking. But I'm going to assume he's taking the Patriots in this one. He does like Deshaun Watson, but I think he's going to take the Pats if he gets back to us. Before we're done recording, I will fill in. We're going to start picking these up. Here we have the Tennessee Titans taking on the Baltimore Ravens, both teams coming off disappointing losses last week. I think, at least if you're the Ravens, you can kind of blame it. You can kind of chalk it up to the weather, especially in that last drive. That was just an absolute, just Hurricane Katrina-esque elements there in New England. But if you're the Titans, man, you just got outplayed in every single facet of the game against the Indianapolis Colts. And that is why I am taking the Baltimore Ravens in this one. I just think that top to bottom, they're a better football team. Lamar Jackson's going to bounce back. They have weapons on this team to allow him to do so. And that defense, this defense is tougher than the Colts defense, which gave Tennessee a lot of problems last week. And I just think that the Ravens, they need this one to bounce back, to build some momentum for the playoffs, and they'll get it. Jay, what about you?
Well, the Colts defense is still number 1 in yards allowed per game.
I hear it, but I'm still going to take the Ravens defense over them.
That's fair, and that's makes a lot of sense, including when you think about the Pro Bowl talent they have on that side of the ball. I still don't think the Colts are the number 1 defense. I was just saying that they have the number 1
I hear
yards
you.
allowed. Right. So, this game's interesting. I'll give the Titans a pass in the Colts game just because it was Thursday Night Football. They stunk it up, unexcusable. Thursday Night Football, weird stuff can happen. I'm gonna take the Titans here, and this is solely based on last year's playoff game. I know it's a new season, but the Titans proved that they had a great game plan. This is a game plan that the Chiefs adopted earlier this season too. This is a game where running the ball is going to be the main priority for both teams. It's a game where if either team falls behind, it's going to be hard for that team to catch up. Whoever grabs the lead early in this game will probably end up winning. That's just how these teams play. That's just how they're built. Tannehill has looked great this year. He doesn't throw the ball all that much. It might be hard for him to climb back into a game. Same with Lamar. I'm going to take the Titans here because of what I saw from Mike Vrabel in that game plan last year. This would be a big win for Lamar's confidence, I think. If he can kind of expunge that loss in the playoffs last year and get a win here, that really feel good for this team. Because they need to secure that number 1 wild card if you're looking from their point of view. It's going to be too hard to catch up to the Steelers now. You kind of want that 5 seed. I'm going to take the Titans here. It's going to be a great game. Probably one of the games of the week behind maybe the Rams-Bucks game and maybe the Colts-Packers game. But definitely up there. I'm excited for this one. I'm going to roll with Tennessee.
Yeah, I think that you made some solid points there. I do think it will come down to which quarterback steps up, makes the bigger plays when they're called upon, because we know how these teams operate. They're going to be utilizing their running backs heavy in the first 2 downs, and these defenses are tough. So if they're able to stop them, it's going to be who can convert on 3rd downs more, which quarterback can be more consistent. And Trent apparently believes that's going to be Ryan Tannehill, which is not something he's bet on often, but he did pick the Titans this week. He is a notorious Tannehill hater, but I also know he loves Derrick Henry and probably loves his chances against Baltimore's defense, which just saw Damian Harris run all over them last week. So we'll see what happens there. I take the Ravens. You and Trent take the Titans. Moving on, we have the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Cleveland Browns. 2 underwhelming teams, and I say underwhelming even though Cleveland is set up to make the playoffs this year, just because they've been winning games, and I guess we should be happy about that as Browns fans, but man, it just hasn't been impressive whatsoever. And we know that the way they win games it's ugly. It's grinded out, running the ball football. Baker Mayfield has not gotten the chance to show that he can be a franchise quarterback this year just because they hand the ball off 25 to 35 times per game to these guys, and they should. When you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt on your roster, you should be getting the ball in their hands as often as you can, especially if it's working. And Jay, I'll throw this one to you first. Who are you taking, Philly or Cleveland? Well,
I'm taking Cleveland, and let's be clear, there is one Browns fan in this live stream right now, and it is you, Jeff. Not a Browns fan. The Browns should win. They're the better team. They need to pick up this win. You could say the Eagles need to pick up this win, but do they? I mean, you only need like 6 wins to win that division as of right now.
Honestly,
it's probably
they're on pace. They're on pace.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's coming down to the Eagles and the Giants, but who knows? The football team could sneak in there. I mean,
yeah.
It's unpredictable. The NFC East is unpredictable. Yeah, I'm going to go with the Browns. I just think they're the better team, and I think it's really that simple.
Fair enough. All right, I'm taking the Browns too. I don't foresee this banged-up Eagles defense being able to contain Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I had an argument with someone on Twitter yesterday when I said that the Eagles statistically were one of the worst teams against the run this year, which is the fact. They're a bottom 7 team against the run. In terms of rushing yards allowed per game. Obviously, they've contained a couple of people so far this year, but they haven't necessarily played against a lot of talent. They've been facing the Wayne Gallmans of the world if you catch my drift. And this week they are facing, as I said earlier, the best 1-2 punch in football in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And both of them are healthy coming into this game, which hasn't been the case so far this year for most of the time for Cleveland. And it is this week. And I just think that they're going to run all over him, control the pace, win this game. I don't see Carson Wentz and the Eagles being able to win this game coming from behind, which is why I'm taking Cleveland. All right. Trent also took the Browns in this one for reference, which is something he doesn't do often. So that shows you how much he doesn't like Philly. Moving on, we have a game that I think is going to be a primetime matchup, even though one of these quarterbacks is out. It is the New Orleans Saints taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, we got the news yesterday that Taysom Hill will be the starter for this team, or at least that's what they're saying right now, that he's been getting the first team reps. He's going to be their quarterback. I know for fantasy, every single major fantasy platform except ESPN said, no, you can't use him at tight end, but ESPN said, go ahead, throw him in at tight end. So that gives teams basically a super flex in leagues where it's a regular league, which is unfortunate. I wish ESPN would have fixed that, but that's what you get if you're playing ESPN fantasy football anyway, I guess, instead of one of these more thorough platforms dedicated to that, like Sleeper, etc. But moving on, this isn't about fantasy. This is about the Atlanta Falcons taking on the New Orleans Saints. Jay, I guess I'll start. I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm taking Atlanta in this one just because I think that they have the firepower necessary to outgun Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, whoever's under center for this New Orleans team. And I wouldn't be shocked if New Orleans comes out and wins this game by 10 points. I'm saying that, but I don't think that's how it's going to go. Matt Ryan's been playing quietly pretty good football this year. Julio Jones, the last couple of weeks, has looked like his normal self. Calvin Ridley's going to be back. I mean, Hayden Hurst, another guy who's quietly emerged as a must-start tight end in fantasy leagues. He's been much more consistent as he's developed a rapport with Matt Ryan over the past couple of weeks. Todd Gurley, he's been everything the Hawks could have asked of him so far this year in terms of production. I know he hasn't been the guy that he was a couple of years ago in LA, but he's been pretty solid. I'm taking Atlanta in this one. I just think that they're going to outgun them, but it's going to be a good game. Jay, how about you?
Yeah, this one is truly unpredictable. We remember last season the Saints went 5-0 with Teddy Bridgewater. I don't think Drew Brees being out is going to hurt them as much as some people may think. But the reality is they chose to start Taysom Hill this week, which in my opinion, listen, I know they want to see what Taysom Hill can do. I know that Taysom was being looked at by other teams for a QB, starting quarterback role. So I get why they're interested, but the reality is, I saw a stat yesterday that Mohamed Sanu has thrown more passes, or not more passes, has done a better job at quarterback than Taysom Hill in terms of throwing the ball. So, you're taking a huge risk here. And I know the Falcons are the Falcons, but that's still a football team in the National Football League. So I'm going to go with the Saints because they are the better team by far. I think that if there was any team to start a quarterback against, this would be that team. I mean, that secondary in Atlanta is just, I've said it before, Swiss cheese. Worst comes to worst, he can dump it off to Kamara. So I'm going to go with the Saints. But listen, I think Jameis should have gotten this opportunity. I think he deserves it. They signed him for a reason. We know he can throw the ball. He just got laser eye surgery. Let's see what – or is that LASIK?
LASIK, yeah.
Laser eye surgery.
Laser eye surgery.
I think Winston should have got a shot here. And maybe he'll get it, if they lose this game or even if Taysom doesn't do a good enough job. But if I'm Jameis, I'd be a little disappointed because – why do you bring me in if you're not going to play him when Drew Brees gets hurt? But maybe he will. I mean, who knows? Maybe this is just a distraction. It's an unpredictable game when Jameis steps in or when Taysom steps in. So I'm going to go with the Saints, but who knows?
Yeah, I agree. I was saying earlier this week that this could just all be a smoke screen. They could roll Taysom Hill out there to be the starter for the first series, and Jameis Winston could take over after that. We honestly have zero idea what's going to happen this game, which is why, in my opinion, it's going to be a good one. I think that if they throw Jameis Winston in at some point, it makes it much more entertaining because we know who he is. He's a gunslinger. He's going to throw. three picks a game, but he also could throw 5 touchdowns a game. It's just who he is. And I think that he could take this Saints offense to an interesting level if he plays up to his potential, at least in this offense. But that being said, Jay takes the Saints. I take the Falcons. Trent also took the Saints. Unsurprisingly, he said earlier this year he would never pick the Falcons again, and I think he stuck to his word after they burned him many times. Moving on, we have the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Washington football team. Jay, being from the DC area, who are you taking in this one?
Taking the Washington football team. I took the Lions last week against them, and the football team almost pulled that one out. So, if Alex Smith can play like that again, I think that they have a good chance here. We have McLaurin, who's playing like a top 5 wide receiver. McKissick is getting a ton of targets. When you pair that with Antonio Gibson, their offense can look pretty good at times. And it did last week, albeit against a pretty bad defense, but they're playing another bad defense here. So it's going to come down to that DC secondary, and if they can get back to what they were before last week. And it's gonna come down to getting to Joe Burrow, and forcing at least a couple turnovers. So I'm gonna roll with the football team here. But anytime that you bet on the football team, you're gonna be nervous watching the entire game. So let's see.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Washington football team in this one, too. The Bengals just announced, after holding Joe Mixon out of like 3 straight games, they put him on IR. Kind of disappointed that they didn't do that in the first place, because it would have made their intentions a lot easier or a lot more clear, at least because they just were hesitant to provide an update the entire time he was out. They kept saying he was day to day, and he missed 3 straight weeks, and now he's out at least 3 more weeks. And in my opinion, he's done for the year, because if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, you just gave Joe Mixon the bag this offseason, and coming back, in week 14, when there's absolutely nothing on the line, it makes 0 sense to throw him back out there and risk another injury. Just roll with Samaje Perine. Gio Bernard's been really good in his absence, and he should be a fantasy high-end RB2 with RB1 potential, according to matchups, if they utilize him as they should. But yeah, you look at this Washington football team, who, by the way, said that they might be committing to that name as the permanent name of their franchise this week, which is just so dumbfounding to me. But Alex Smith looked really good last week. He threw for well over 300 yards. He just didn't find the end zone, which, I don't think that's going to happen again this week against this abysmal Cincinnati defense. He's got the weapons, as you said, Jay. Terry McLaurin, there were a lot of questions about his potential production heading into the year, and he has shut them down and answered the bell as one of the best receivers in the NFL this year. So I'm very proud to see him produce what he's been able to produce. And besides that, they have a couple other weapons in this offense. I just think they're going to be able to get it done, but more so on the defensive side of the ball. And checking in real quick to see who Trent took in this one, he took the Bengals. All right, so after not taking the Bengals for a couple of weeks, Trent pivots to Joe Burrow in Cincinnati in this one. Both you and I took the Washington football team. Moving on, we have the New York Jets taking on the Los Angeles Chargers, who, man, they just can't win these close games. What is it? Their last 5 or 6 losses have each been within a score, something like that. A couple of them have been absolutely heartbreaking at the buzzer. It's just sad to watch, because Justin Herbert has all the potential in the world. This team is talented, and I feel bad for Anthony Lynn, because he's probably going to lose his job because of this their poor performance this year. Jay, I'm sure you have a lot to say about this Chargers team. Who are you taking in this game?
I don't know if he's going to lose his job. Yeah, it's always.
I think he will, man. I'm not going to lie. After the Herbert versus Tyrod, or Tyrod, as he likes to be called, drama earlier on in the year, and then piling up the losses, I just think it's an easy call to make, or if there's an easy option for them to fire him if they decide to do so. But yeah, I'll let you talk.
I hear you. And I think a lot of Chargers fans would probably educate me on the reasons for him being fired, and I would listen. I just think it's really hard to find coaching in the National Football League sometimes. Sometimes you can just you can make a mistake making a change. Yeah, that being said, the Chargers haven't lost by more than a score this whole season. They're up there with the Chiefs and the Steelers with that stat. Just talk about the Steelers real quick. I said Big Ben's having a top 5 stat season. I meant 10, just for the record. Anyway, back to this. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, you obviously have to take the Chargers here. The Jets have not won a game. They haven't won a game for a reason. I know they looked good against us, but that's just because Joe Flacco is going to play well against the Patriots. I think that's what that was. I don't think – I was looking at the Jets cornerbacks today. I know Lamar Jackson is on that roster, but that's the only big name. I don't think Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are going to get stopped much. I think Herbert will be able to find them. That's basically what this game comes down to. I think that if you have Justin Herbert on your fantasy team, he deserves a start here, unless you have someone that's, been playing better than him significantly. So I don't think it's, not rocket science.
Yeah, I don't think it's rocket science either. I'm taking the Chargers. Similar to other matchups, top to bottom, this team is just much, much better than the Jets at this point. I think a lot of people were excited for LaMichael Pirine when Le'Veon Bell was released, and he has just done nothing so far. And you can't really blame him. It's hard to when you're playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in football, on one of the worst teams or the worst team in football. And I think, it's safe to say that Trevor Lawrence might be seriously considering coming back to Clemson for another year if he's going to New York. I don't think it's going to happen, but I just like to
Trevor.
I like to add fire to the speculation there. But yeah, I'm taking the Chargers. Both of us rolled with LA. Trent actually took the Jets.
I respect
in this one. He said that it was time for a win. And you know what? They haven't been playing horrible football over the last couple of weeks, I guess you could say. So who knows? Trent, props to you if you get this one right and the Jets pull out a win. Moving on, we have the Miami Dolphins, who have just shocked everyone except Trent, speaking of him, because he predicted they were going to make the playoffs this year during our preseason podcast, taking on the beat-up Denver Broncos, who just look like a shell of their potential right now. Jay, I'll throw it to you. Who are you taking in this one?
Yeah, you got to go with the Dolphins here, right? How good have they looked? I've said it for the last 2 weeks. Trent was completely right. They're a game out of the division. The Bills are on a bye here. I think this win would it keep them a half game back? What would this?
I'm looking right now. They win here, and then the Bills are on bye, so they tie them 7-3.
Right. Okay, so they
have they played the Bills? I think they played the Bills.
Beat them. The Bills beat them.
Oh, they did. They beat them week 2, but it was by 3, so they would have the edge. But yeah, they'd be tied.
Right. Yeah. I remember saying back then, wow, the Bills gave a lot of points to the Dolphins. They shouldn't have kept that close. But now, at this point, it's like, well, the Dolphins really might be the better team. Yeah. That defense is really stepping up. They look scary. They definitely intimidated Herbert last week. That's for sure. Again, Flores is doing a great job. And this Broncos team really just doesn't have the quarterback or the durability at every single one of their positions this year to upset this Dolphins team. I don't want to be too hard on Drew Lock. He hasn't had much what do you call it? Things have been very different, changing a lot for him. He hasn't had much stability on this Broncos team. But at the end of the day, I think the Dolphins should have their way with this team.
Yeah. It's definitely fair. For me, it's simple. Miami is coming off a 5-game win streak, and Denver is not. And Denver is the much worse team. So I'm going to roll with the Dolphins this week. And I don't even think I have to check to see who Trent picked in this one. No shocker there. It's Miami. He's going to roll with his Dolphins until the wheels fall off the wagon. We all take Miami there. Moving on, we have the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Minnesota Vikings, who, preseason, this would have been billed as one of the games of the year, I think, or at least one of the better games of the year. I think a lot of people were expecting more from this Vikings team, and a lot of people were expecting more from the Dallas Cowboys this year. But, looking at it now, these are two teams that are probably on track to miss the playoffs, although the Vikings, they still have a shot to pull it out, and the Cowboys are in the NFC East, so they always have a shot if they get hot. Jay, who are you taking in this one?
Taking the Vikings. I picked the Bears last week, and the Vikings played better football than the Bears. This Cowboys team is a lot worse than the Bears are. I don't want to make the mistake of picking against the Vikings again, against a team that really has looked like one of the worst teams in football this year, especially with Dak out. There is really no chance for them this year. Yeah. Listen, I'm not that high on the Vikings, but I think that they're sort of making a Falcons-like run here where they're picking up some games after after a horrible start to the year. They need to win this game, and I think they do. They need to win it to make the record look better.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm taking Minnesota in this one. They've looked pretty good over the last couple of weeks. Kirk Cousins seems to have somewhat hit his stride, and Dalvin Cook has just been carrying them to wins by himself. Yeah. Obviously, he wasn't able to do that against one of the best run defenses in the league in Chicago last week, but they still put out the win. Adam Thielen finally showed up. Justin Jefferson looked much more consistent than he had in prior weeks. So, this Vikings team is trending up, and this Cowboys team is just extremely volatile. So I'm taking Minnesota in this one as well, just to check in on who Trent took in this one. It was the Vikings. So all three of us rolling with Minnesota. No shocker there. We are into our final three games of the week, starting off with the Green Bay Packers taking on the Indianapolis Colts. This one's going to be a pretty good game. The Colts got a big win, as we mentioned earlier, over the Titans last week, and the Packers were just barely able to squeak out a win over the Jaguars. Devontae Adams will be suiting up after earlier concerns this week due to an ankle injury he sustained last week. Jay, I'll throw it to you. Who are you taking?
I'm going to go with the Colts here. I think they're favored because of what happened last week. Colts beating the Titans, doubling their point total. And the Packers only winning by 4 against Jacksonville. I've said it before. I'll say it again. A win is a win. A loss is a loss. So I'm not going to deduct too many points from the Packers here for only winning by 4 against another National Football League team. But at the same time, you can't help but feel that one team is trending up a little more than the Packers are, And I think that defense has a lot to do with it for the Colts. The real question was, can the Colts produce on offense? And last week they did against a pretty bad secondary. And the Packers don't necessarily have a better secondary than the Titans. You know what I mean? So Phillip definitely needs to come through again this week. I predicted that he would throw the ball a lot against the Titans, which he did. I didn't think he'd do as well as he did. I thought he would turn the ball over. So he needs to have a similar game here. He's going to have the edge in terms of he's probably going to have an easier time moving the ball than Aaron Rodgers. But the truth is that Aaron Rodgers is the far better quarterback this year, and all time. Not to. I'm sorry, Phillip Rivers. You're a Hall of Famer. But, so it's going to come down to, can the Colts frustrate Aaron? Can the Colts guard Devontae Adams? The answer is probably no there, but they're going to have to limit what happens. They have a lot of talented players on that defense. It's coming through. There's not really a lot of names that you can point to, but they're a unit. And they're proving that they're definitely a top 3 defense in this league. You could debate that, but right now the stats are in their favor. I certainly think I could name probably the Steelers. You could name the Ravens. You can name the Bucks, maybe the Saints, maybe the Bears over them. But it is really close, and I know the Colts have had some easier games that they've played, for sure. But you play who's in front of you, and the Colts have dominated on defense. So what they're going to have to do is replicate that here again. I think if they hold the Packers to 23 points or fewer, then Phillip Rivers can do his job. But that's no easy task against a Packers offense that is highly touted for a reason. Great game, taking the Colts.
Fair enough. For me, it's much more simple. I just think it's hard to pick against Aaron Rodgers when he's playing at an MVP level, which he is right now. He's definitely in the top three of the race, with Russell Wilson especially playing down to the level he's played. Obviously, he had a good game last week and might be able to help himself out if the other contenders aren't able to play up to their same level that they have been over the last couple of weeks. But, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, probably the best connection of football right now when Adams is healthy. And I just don't see the Colts being able to contain that. And even if they are, Aaron Jones still exists. He is still one of the best running backs in the National Football League. I just think that Green Bay has too many weapons. And you look at the Colts, man, I know that they beat the Titans, but you watch that game, and I just don't see Nyheim Hines just taking this Packers defense to town like he did against the Titans. And I like Hines, but I mean, I just don't see it happening. So I'm going to take the Packers. Trent is also taking the Packers, and he threw in a little note saying that Green Bay is somehow an underdog in this matchup. Bet a lot on the Packers. So
I understand that logic completely.
Yeah, 100%. All right, moving on. We have a rematch of one of the best games of the year, which is Chiefs-Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders were able to pull off the upset last time. I'm not quite sure they're going to be able to do it. This one, they do have a lot of COVID cases going into this matchup. They had 10 players on the injured/COVID reserve list, and I think 7 are coming off for the game tomorrow, if I saw as of late. They haven't been able to practice, obviously, with the team. Jay, I'll throw it to you. Who are you taking?
Okay, so listen, I think the Chiefs are the best team in the league right now for a reason. They're running the ball really well, and they have Patrick Mahomes, and that defense has actually played really well. The defense is allowing less points per game than the Bucs. I mean, hey, people talk about that Bucs defense because it's really good, but the Chiefs have had a great year on defense. And part of that is because Patrick Mahomes has turned the ball over once. I could be wrong. Maybe he's fumbled the ball. 1 interception. People forget that quarterback play can absolutely help out defenses. And that's what you get with Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't turn the ball over that much. What was the one team that got an interception off Patrick Mahomes and probably should have got a couple more? That was the Raiders. I don't like picking against the Chiefs. You very often look stupid picking against the Chiefs. I'm not ready to say that they're like this, a Patriots-esque dynasty, but that's basically how the odds work for them, right? That's basically, what their record looks like over the last 3 years. So I'm going to pick the Raiders here. They're at home. They're getting those 7 people back. Is it likely that the Chiefs get swept in their division? No, but the fact is the Raiders are a very good team, and I kind of want to see it happen. So I'm going to go with the Raiders here. Derek Carr has played really well. I don't think many people realize this, but he has. The stats are there for him. Yeah. Going to go with the Raiders here, but Patrick Mahomes is very capable of making me look very dumb come next week.
Yeah, I respect the take, but I just see absolutely no way that the Chiefs drop 2 games in a year to any team right now. They're the defending Super Bowl champs for a reason, and they are the best team in football right now, in my opinion. Sorry, Steelers fans. I'm still going to take the Chiefs over you, and I think that will show its true colors in the playoffs come that time.
Did they play each other in the regular season?
I don't think so. Let me check. I think a lot of people are consistent. No, they don't.
The Steelers have a very nice schedule on the way out.
Yes, they do. They do have a nice schedule, which makes it, because I know a lot of people were actively betting on them to go undefeated at this point because of their remaining schedule. And if the Chiefs were on that, I'm sure it wouldn't be the case. But I'm taking Patrick Mahomes and company in this one. I think that, the Raiders' COVID concerns this week is only going to hurt them. I think that their defensive coordinator went on a radio show this week and said, I have no idea how we're going to beat them. I don't even know how we're going to beat them. Yes. I think he went on a radio show and said this is while he was like practicing without most of his defensive line, because I think 9 out of 10 of those players that were on the list were defensive players. And he was basically saying, man, even if we're healthy, I don't know how we're going to beat them. So he's basically just preparing.
Mind games he's playing right now.
I guess so. I just see no chance that the Chiefs drop two games to the same team in a year. But you know what? If it happens, Jay, I'll give you major props. I'll just
What
say
was the
that.
last score? Like 40-37? They don't have to stop Patrick Mahomes necessarily.
I guess so, but I just don't think that the Chiefs defense is going to roll over like that. Again, I love Josh Jacobs, but I'm not sure he rushes for 200 yards against the Chiefs this time around. Trent also took the Chiefs in this one, and we are into the final game of the week for our predictions. It's going to be a good one. It's the Los Angeles Rams taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This Rams team has surprised a lot of people this year. They've come out, looked like I think what people were expecting them to be last year.
Right.
And the Bucs, they've been somewhat up and down, but they are what we expect a Tom Brady team to be, which is a legitimate contender. And they played very good football against the Carolina Panthers last week. Literally doubled their score. I think, 46-23, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so this is going to be a good one, and I'll start. Jay, I know you're not going to like this, but I'm taking the Rams in this one, and it might be foolish for me to pick against Tom Brady after balling out against the Panthers last week. But I look at what the Rams have done over the last couple of weeks. They beat the Seahawks, and they lost the Dolphins, but that was because of an incredible defensive showing by Miami in that one. Jared Goff, he did good just to claw the Rams back in that game. And, the week before that, they dominated the Bears. So this team, they have very good defense. They have an elite offense in terms of the weapons that they have to work with. And I just think that, Tom Brady, this Bucs team, they're still trying to figure out exactly what the pecking order is in terms of both their wide receiver core and their running back depth, because Ronald Jones coming into last week, he'd done nothing for a couple of weeks and he hadn't really gotten the opportunity to, but then he broke off a 98-yard touchdown, and look at him now. He's clearly the starter again for them. And Fournette, it seems like both of them aren't able to have a good game in a week, so that's definitely a problem. Jay, I know you have a lot to say, so I'll wrap up here. I'm going to take the Rams in this one. Trent is also, or not Trent, also Trent's going to take the Bucs. No surprise there. Jay, I'm sure you're taking Tampa Bay. Tell me why.
Well, Rojo did have a good running game besides the 98-yard touchdown as well, albeit the Panthers after last week have given up 4.8 yards a carry. But I want to talk about the Rams first. I apologize. I think I may have not included them when I was talking about the top defenses off the top of my head. The Rams are for sure up there, obviously. They've been playing great football on the defensive side of the ball. And their secondary plays very well with their front seven, front four. I think they're a team that's going to give the Bucs offense, at least they've given them trouble already in practice this week, preparing for them, for sure. And I understand the logic here taking the Rams. The Bucs have not looked good in primetime games this year or against good defenses, as well as they've looked in other games, at least. I think my logic here has more to do with Jared Goff and the Rams offense this week. We saw them put up, 23 points against the Seahawks, albeit Kyler Murray's 21-point performance on Thursday puts that into perspective a little bit. Seahawks have been playing better football on defense the last 2 weeks. Still, you have to put up more against one of the worst secondaries in the last decade in the Seahawks. And then the Rams turned around and didn't look that convincing last week. Who did they play last week?
The Rams?
Yeah, were they?
They were on a bye.
Right. Okay.
Wait, were they on a bye? Hold on. I feel like they were on a bye.
I think they were. Now I'm saying that.
They were on a bye.
So basically, what I'm saying is their offense did not look convincing against the Seahawks. And then, if you remember the Dolphins game where.
Oh, wait, no. Actually, they weren't. They beat the Seahawks. What am I saying? They beat Seattle last week.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. What am I saying? I literally just said that. Yeah, they beat Seattle in like convincing fashion last week.
Right.
Yeah.
But not because of the offense.
No, their defense was amazing. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, that was bad. Anyway. Yeah, listen, I think the Rams offense does not surprise me even with all those weapons. I think that the Bucs are going to cause a lot of problems. That front seven is so fast. I mean, these defenders come flying out of the backfield. We saw the clip of Buda Baker on Thursday Night Football flying out of the backfield in the first quarter. That Seahawks Cardinals, that's like the whole Bucs front seven. They all come downhill like that. So I think Jared Goff is going to probably fumble again here. I think he's going to have an interception too. And I think Brady just plays better football. I think even Brady could have a really good game against this really stout Rams defense because of all the weapons he has and how well he's been playing. I think even if he doesn't have a good game, the Bucs should be able to help him out on defense, which they really haven't done much the last 3 weeks since the Packers game. I mean, really, I know people look at the scoreboard last week, and I know they see the 46, but, you know, it wasn't until the defense really stops the Panthers in the second half that the game, you know, was over. Because in that first half, the Panthers were really keeping that game close in large part because of how the Bucs defense was letting things go over their head. And so, you know, I just think that's been a problem for this Bucs team. I think the defense finally gets back to what it was against, you know, the Packers this season and against the Saints the first game too, against the Bears. You know, I think they're going to limit the Rams team to under 20 points this week. And I think if Brady doesn't turn the ball over, this game should be over.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, that wraps up the picks for this week. Jay, I know you wanted to briefly touch upon Thursday Night Football, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals, so I will let you do so before we wrap up. Try to keep it short for the viewers at home.
Yeah, well, I just want to say one thing, really, and that is I'm 5-0 on the time on the show when picking the Seahawks.
Oh, God.
I think I have a pretty good read on that team.
All right, fair enough.
And I wanted to correct myself. I said I was 37-18. I'm 37-19 heading into week 11. So I'm trying to fix that here. I want to be at like, man, it'd be nice if I was at like over 50 and like 20 or 21 or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
We'll see.
We will see. All right, and that is going to wrap up this episode of the Rollout. Jay, thank you for joining me as always. I'm sure we'll have you back on next week with hopefully a healthy Trent. For all of you out there, stay safe. I know we're going through some hard times with COVID striking up again all around America, but everyone enjoy some football, hopefully with just your family this weekend, unless you're getting out there. And if you do, stay safe. Enjoy the games this weekend. And, yeah, have some fun. See you next week.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
No problem. See you next week, Jay.